Okay, wow. This time you've really outdone yourself. I mean, a declassified CIA report from 1974 titled Perceptual Augmentation Techniques. Seriously, this
Yeah.
is like right up our alley, exploring the fringes of what we know or think we know about human perception. I'm ready to dive in.
Yeah, you're in for a wild ride with this one.
Okay.
So picture this. It's 1974, the Cold War at its peak, and the CIA, they're investing in all sorts of research trying to get an edge,
Fun.
an advantage over the Soviets. I mean, they were looking into everything, even the possibility of psychic spies.
Psychic spies. Whoa. Okay, now that's an image.
Right.
Okay.
Now, this report, it feels like it's straight out of a spy thriller. Progress Report number 1, okay, dated January to March 1974, from the Stanford Research Institute, no less. It even says client private. Super hush-hush.
Wow.
We might not know exactly who commissioned this thing, but the implications are very tantalizing.
Speaking of tantalizing, let's get to the heart of it.
Yeah.
What exactly were they researching? The report's objective is worded in a very scientific way. It talks about perceptual modalities and information not presented to any known sense, which
Yeah.
basically means they were trying to figure out if people can sense things without using their normal 5 senses.
Yeah, exactly. Think ESP, telepathy, clairvoyance, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
The CIA was particularly interested in something called remote viewing. The idea that someone could perceive a distant place or event without actually being there.
Really?
Yeah. Imagine the intelligence possibilities.
That's like something out of a science fiction movie. They weren't just theorizing, though, were they? This report, it mentions actual experiments.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
They were conducting rigorous studies
Yeah.
involving psychologists, statisticians, the whole 9 yards.
So walk us through it. How did these experiments actually work?
So,
Imagine I'm someone who has no idea what they're talking about. So
Yeah.
how did they do it?
okay, so they had a team visit random locations like a park, a building, you name it. Well, a subject tried to describe the location from somewhere else, completely isolated.
Oh, wow. So someone would be like blindfolded in a different room.
Yeah, in a different room, completely isolated, no contact with the outside world. And they even used walkie-talkies, so the researchers could ask the subject questions in real time, comparing their descriptions to what the team was seeing on the ground.
Can you imagine being that subject, trying to describe something you couldn't possibly see with your own eyes?
I can't imagine.
Yeah.
Talk about pressure.
Yeah.
Did they have any success with these experiments?
He did. There's a fascinating account of a pilot experiment where the subject accurately described a small red clapboard schoolhouse with a steeple. And they chose it randomly. He had never been there before. Nothing.
What?
Yeah.
Whoa, hold on. So they weren't just chasing shadows. They had them concrete results. What else did they uncover? Give me some more.
Alongside the remote viewing experiments, they also conducted what they called basic research. Basically trying to understand what made these individuals with these apparent abilities tick. It's like they were trying to reverse engineer psychic abilities.
Interesting. Okay, so the report mentioned several individuals who became like test subjects in their research.
Yeah.
Patrick Price, Hella Hamid, Dwayne Elgin. Were these people already known for having special abilities?
Some of them like Pat Price. Yeah, he had already shown remarkable abilities. Others were less sure of their potential, but the researchers saw something in them, some spark that they wanted to investigate further.
So they were sort of casting a wide net, looking for anyone who might hold the key to unlocking these extraordinary abilities. Did they have any luck pinpointing what made these individuals different?
That's where things get really interesting. They started to look into the impact of motivation on these abilities, even experimenting with like rewards to see if it enhanced their performance.
So they were basically saying, hey, if you can tap into your inner psychic and tell us what we want to know, you might just walk away a little richer. Interesting. Did this approach yield any significant results?
Well, one subject, PP, he completed over 7,000 trials.
They were analyzing his brainwaves during these trials, looking for any patterns or anomalies that correlated with successful attempts at remote viewing.
7,000 trials. This PP guy must have had the patience of a saint. Did all that data lead to any breakthroughs?
That's what we'll delve into next. But let me just say, things are about to get even more intriguing as we uncover the results of these groundbreaking experiments. Yeah, so PP's results. This is where the story gets really interesting. They hooked him up to an EEG, right, which measures brain activity, and had him complete these tasks, sometimes with a reward and sometimes without.
Okay, so they were trying to see if like dangling a carrot, so to speak,
Right.
would amplify his psychic abilities.
Yeah, precisely. And the results, while not conclusive, were definitely intriguing. They found subtle but statistically significant changes in his brainwaves when he was successfully performing these tasks, especially when there was a reward involved.
Oh, wow. So his brain was literally lighting up when he tapped into something beyond the ordinary. That's incredible.
It suggests that something measurable was happening, you know, something that might correlate with what they are calling remote perception.
Okay, this is where I have to ask about the elephant in the room, Uri Geller. I mean, you can't talk about psychic research in the 1970s without mentioning the spoon-bending sensation himself.
Oh, you're absolutely right. And the report doesn't shy away from Geller's controversial abilities. I mean, they were just as fascinated by him as the rest of the world.
Right. Okay, so they brought him in for their own experiments. Like, what did they want to test with Uri Geller?
Well,
I mean, the guy's famous for bending spoons, so
right.
what
So
did they do?
they were particularly interested in his claimed ability to reproduce images he hadn't seen. So imagine someone draws a picture, hides it, and Geller, without ever laying eyes on it, can somehow recreate that image.
Oh, that's wild. It sounds impossible.
Right.
How would you even...
That's why they went to extraordinary lengths to create a controlled environment, eliminating any chance of trickery or hidden cues.
Okay, so like what? Like they built like a super secure room?
Exactly. They monitored the room for any subtle signals, like changes in electromagnetic fields that might tip him off. They were determined to rule out any conventional explanations.
It's like they were anticipating every skeptical question and trying to address it head on.
Precisely. And remember, this was the CIA.
Yeah.
Okay. An organization known for its secrecy and skepticism. If they were taking this seriously, you know, they weren't messing around.
Okay, so what happened? Did Geller pass their tests? Was he able to reproduce those hidden drawings?
Here's where things get really fascinating. Over 7 days, they conducted 13 experiments with Geller, using a variety of target images. Everything from a firecracker to a church.
Okay, so they weren't just testing him on simple shapes or patterns. These were complex images.
Absolutely. And what's even more intriguing is that they didn't always show him the target directly. Sometimes it was hidden in an adjacent room. Other times it was locked away in a computer or even located miles away.
Okay, now you're just messing with me. So how on earth could he possibly have known what those images were if he couldn't see them?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And while the report doesn't offer definitive proof, the results, when analyzed statistically, are pretty compelling.
Hold on, you're saying there's statistical evidence suggesting Geller wasn't just randomly guessing.
Exactly. The odds of him consistently matching those images by pure chance are astronomically small. Even the researchers were astonished by some of the results.
This is incredible. But I'm guessing not everyone was convinced, right? There must have been some skeptics raising eyebrows.
Of course. And the researchers acknowledged that their findings didn't prove Geller was psychic. But they argued that the results warranted further investigation. They couldn't dismiss the possibility that something extraordinary was at play.
Okay, so after testing their theories on a self-proclaimed psychic, where did the research go from there? Did they delve deeper into this remote viewing phenomenon?
They did. They brought in another individual, Ingo Swann, who, like Geller, claimed to possess remarkable remote viewing abilities. But unlike the experiments with Geller, they decided to focus on something even more intriguing, remote viewing of real-world locations.
Okay, now we're talking. This sounds like it's straight out of a spy thriller. What kind of locations were they targeting?
Think geographical features, landmarks, things like that. They wanted to see if Swann could describe a place accurately, down to the smallest details, without ever having been there physically.
I can see why the CIA would be interested in this. Imagine the intelligence gathering possibilities. So how did they ensure Swann wasn't just relying on maps or prior knowledge?
They were meticulous in their approach.
Yeah.
They'd select a target location randomly, a place Swann had no prior knowledge of. And then while he was situated in a controlled environment miles away, they'd ask him to describe what he saw.
This is incredible. It's like they were sending his mind on a secret mission. Did he succeed? Was he able to accurately describe those remote locations?
That's what we'll delve into next as we uncover the remarkable results of Swann's remote viewing experiments and their implications for the world of espionage and the limits of human perception.
So last time we left off with Ingo Swann and his attempts to, remotely view these real-world locations. This sounds like something straight out of a spy movie. Did he actually pull it off?
Well, the results were intriguing, to say the least.
Yeah.
In some cases, Swann's descriptions were incredibly accurate, like really lining up with the actual locations in ways that seemed to defy chance or prior knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
He describes specific buildings, landscapes, even the weather conditions, all while miles away in a secure room.
It's like they really were sending his mind on a mission. It's like something out of science fiction, except this was actually happening in a CIA research lab. It's mind-boggling. Did they have independent verification of his descriptions? I mean, how could they be sure he wasn't just making things up?
They had multiple researchers
Mhm.
who were unaware of the target locations beforehand, compare Swann's descriptions to photographs and maps.
Okay.
And in many instances, the level of detail and accuracy was simply too significant to dismiss as mere coincidence.
Okay, I'm starting to see why the CIA was so interested in this research. Imagine the possibilities if they could train agents to become psychic spies, gathering intelligence from across the globe without ever leaving a room.
Exactly. And Swann's success with remote viewing seemingly validated their efforts.
Hmm.
It was enough to convince them to establish a dedicated program, recruiting individuals like Pat Price, a former police commissioner, to further explore this phenomenon.
Pat Price, now that's an interesting choice. You'd think they'd stick with individuals who are already open to the idea of psychic abilities, but a police commissioner seems like an unexpected candidate.
Yeah, but see, Price's background is actually what made him so intriguing to the researchers.
Really?
Yeah, they wanted to see if someone with a skeptical mind, trained in observation and evidence, could also exhibit these abilities.
Interesting.
And Price, much to their surprise,
Yeah.
turned out to be one of their most successful remote viewers.
So even a hardened skeptic, like a police commissioner, was able to tap into this remote viewing ability. That's incredible. How did his experiments compare to Swann's?
They followed a similar protocol with Price sequestered in a secure location, while the team traveled to a randomly chosen location. Price would then describe his impressions, and independent judges would evaluate the accuracy of his descriptions.
And what were the results like? Was Price able to replicate Swann's success?
Time and time again, Price provided descriptions that aligned with the target locations with startling accuracy. He described buildings, their layout surrounding streets, even the activities taking place, all without any prior knowledge of the location.
This is just blowing my mind. They really seem to have stumbled onto something significant with this remote viewing research, but they didn't stop there, did they? The report mentioned something about using EEGs to measure brain activity during these experiments.
You're right. The researchers wanted to go beyond subjective descriptions and see if they could find measurable physiological evidence of remote perception. They were particularly interested in alpha waves, which are associated with a relaxed, receptive state of mind. They theorized that if someone was truly tapping into a remote information source, their brain waves might show a distinct pattern.
So imagine your brain like a radio alpha waves are like the background static when you're tuned between stations. But when your brain picks up a specific signal boom, that static quiets down. They were looking for that quieting down effect, even if the person wasn't consciously aware of receiving any information.
Exactly. And they found it. One subject, HH, consistently exhibited this alpha blocking effect when someone in another location was being stimulated with a flashing light.
Hold on. You're saying her brain waves reacted to something happening in a completely different location,
Oh, yeah.
even though she had no way of knowing about it through her normal senses.
That's right. They even varied the frequency of the flashing light, and each time HH's brain waves mirrored those changes even though she was completely isolated and unaware of the stimuli.
That's incredible. It's like her brain was somehow picking up on a signal from the other location, a signal that transcended physical distance. It's hard to wrap your head around.
It really is.
Yeah.
And what's even more fascinating is that HH didn't consider herself to have any special abilities. This suggests that this capacity for remote perception might be more widespread than we realize, perhaps lying dormant within many of us.
That's a tantalizing thought. So what conclusions did the researchers draw from all of this? Did they ultimately prove the existence of psychic abilities?
They stopped short of making such a bold claim. They acknowledged that their findings were preliminary, requiring further investigation with larger sample sizes and more refined techniques. However, they were clearly excited by the implications of their research.
So they concluded that their experiments provided compelling evidence for a biological information channel that operates outside our known senses, a channel that allows us to tap into information not accessible through our five senses.
Right. They recognized that this channel, while seemingly real, is also noisy, often obscured by subconscious thoughts, beliefs, and expectations.
They even suggested that this noise might be amplified by the skepticism and disbelief prevalent in society, hindering our ability to fully access these latent abilities.
Yeah, it's a fascinating hypothesis that our own disbelief might be holding us back from exploring the full potential of human consciousness.
This entire report has been a wild ride. We've gone from psychic spies to brainwave anomalies, and it seems like we're just scratching the surface of what's possible.
It really makes you wonder what other secrets are hidden within the depths of the human